bespoke radio for the masses.
Headline edition, July 8, 1947. The Army Air Forces has announced that a flying disc has been found and is now in the possession of the Army.
If the game is rigged, change the game. Game changer.
I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world.
This is Fade to Black with your host, Jimmy Church, on the Game Changer Radio Network and KGRA, the Global Radio Alliance.
I need your help to get to the year 1985.
You're listening to Fade to Black with Jimmy Church on the Game Changer Network.
Good evening. Fade to Black. Bespoke radio for the masses. How you doing? How you doing? Today's Tuesday, November 19th, 2019. 323 days into the new year, just 42 days left. We are live from a bunker somewhere in the middle of beautiful downtown Burbank, California. And I would like to welcome everybody listening all around the world, all across the United States. Hither and thither, to and fro, back and forth, up and down, east and west, north and south, far and near. This is Fade to Black for KJCR, the Game Changer Network, and KGRA, the Planet. I am your host, Jimmy Church. What is cracking, everybody? How you doing? How you doing? All right. This is night 2 of our Open Lines Week here on Fade to Black. 4 straight nights of your calls and questions with some of the best and brightest minds of our community. Tonight, we welcome Travis Walton. Tomorrow night, Whitley Strieber, right here. Thursday night, Richard Dolan. That's a week. That's a full week right there. Travis Walton is back with us tonight. Very excited about this. Okay, welcome back. Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. You can follow me on Twitter at JChurchRadio. Hashtag F2B is the sandbox. You can engage right there. Any questions or comments, hashtag F2BQ on Twitter. Email is jimmy@jimmychurchradio.com. We've got 2 chat rooms open, one at Spreaker, one over at KGRA, The Planet. This is night 2 of our Open Lines Week here on Fade to Black. 4 straight nights of your calls and questions with some of the best and brightest minds of our community. Tonight, Travis Walton. Travis Walton's life changed on November 5th, 1975, while working with the logging crew in the Apache Sitgreaves National Forest in Arizona. The Walton case received mainstream publicity and remains one of the best-known instances of alien abduction. It is one of the very few alien abduction cases with corroborative witnesses, and one of the few abduction cases where the entire time allegedly spent in the custody of aliens plays a rather minor role in the overall account. What has Travis learned over the last 45 years, and what are his opinions about UFOs, our government, ET, our community, abduction, all of this? Tonight, we're going to get those answers and much more, and I would like to welcome back to Fade to Black, Travis Walton. Travis, good evening, man. How are you?
I'm fine.
It's great to hear your voice. I had to say that. It's just great to hear your voice. Everything good out there?
Yeah, well, it started raining today, but that's okay. Got to have a little water now and then.
Send some of it our way. Here in Southern California, everything is on fire right now. And the one thing, right, if we needed chemtrails, right, if we needed If we needed some weather manipulation, we need some rain right now. So send it our way. We can always use it. But that being said, we're heading into the holidays. It's starting to, starting to chill out a little bit. Is it getting cooler out there?
Oh yeah, quite a dramatic temperature drop. It's was up in the 70s and is going down into the 40s. That's definitely a sign that the snow is coming.
Yeah, you guys, and where you're at, even though it's it's snowflake and it's Arizona, you guys get seasons, don't you?
Yes, we do.
And I just have to know, when you guys get snow, how much do you get? I mean, do you get snowman material?
Yeah, we have. We get enough snow to make snowmen or snow angels or toboggan runs or that kind of stuff. But it's not the whole winter, but definitely sometimes it'll snow and it'll be gone in a couple of days. It just doesn't hang in as much as some places.
Now, I'm going to jump straight into it, Travis, because now we get a chance to hang out at conferences all year long, and our conversations are always fun, and it's great to hang out. But and we do it so often, you probably forget some of the conversations we've had over the years. But this past year at the MUFON Symposium, which was held here in Los Angeles, we had the opportunity to sit down with a group of our friends at the restaurant, and we sat and we talked, and it was this that struck me about our conversation, which I don't know if you remember, but nonetheless, you opened up. And I forget the question that I asked. I don't remember exactly what it was. But you immediately opened up and were very passionate on subjects that not only myself, but everybody at the table had never heard you discuss before. And it got to the point where I almost couldn't stop you. So I asked more questions. And I thought to myself, this is something that people need to hear from you. And so by setting this up in that way, do you feel that you've never really had the chance or the forum to just be yourself and to discuss things that you may have very valid opinions on?
Not completely. I've really tried to just the facts, sir.
Right,
and stick with things that I can prove. And there's even some really interesting things that have happened that I don't bring up just because I don't have the kind of documentation that I have for everything else. But I think some of the insight that I've gained in the last 44 years is relevant, and I'll stick with the labeling it my opinion, but still, it's not just picking it out of the thin air. This is something conclusions I've made from observing and thinking pretty deeply on this subject.
Well, let's start here. Let's start with today. Certainly, with the mainstream media and the efforts of different groups out there, certainly TTSA comes to mind as well. But the last 2 years has been a pretty fluid exposure, nearly daily, of the UFO subject. Have you thought why this is happening now?
Well, I think, that the government has wisely shifted position. They're realizing that tamping it down by ridiculing those who report it isn't working anymore. It's not damaging the reporting person's credibility. It's damaging the government's credibility. So they've decided to shift gears and to go ahead and acknowledge certain things. I'm sure they're not going to open up and tell us everything they know, but there is quite a bit that they know that the average person doesn't know. And but I don't agree with a lot of the people who ascribe to the government. Every single motive is something sinister and contrary to our interests. I don't agree with that. I think that there's probably some good reasons for some of this secrecy. And obviously, if the government were to respond to the demands of the population, please throw open the books, make everything known that, they're not just sharing with American citizens, they're sharing with our enemies in the world. And that's not necessarily a good idea. These other countries, they have their inside information to a certain degree, but we don't want them to know, or they don't want us to know just how much they do know. It's important to maintain the secret of how much we know, because it implies a technological advantage in the event of a conflict. So why would it be in our interest to tell them everything we know so that they can judge whether they have harvested a bit more technology than we have?
Well, you certainly have had your share of ridicule and people coming after you, challenging your story. And the community has experienced much the same, and especially the community as a whole. Much of that has come out of Washington and the Pentagon. At this point, how much should we trust what is happening? Because it seems to be an about face. So do we trust the about face too as well?
Well, I think, that most of the people in our government, they live here, they have children here, and I think most of them would like to see America survive and do well and be safe. And it doesn't make sense to me that they would align themselves with some evil group or nefarious plan or plot, because it's contrary to their own interests. And I really do think that there's, until we find out otherwise, and I'm sure there's plenty of people who will hasten to enlighten me about just how evil they all are and how the plot to take over the world is imminent. But I don't agree. It's just simple reasoning to say, look, these entities have been coming here for a very, very long time. There's a record of it going back into the past a long, long time, hundreds of years, Primitive people have recorded encounters and things that can only be understood in terms of this sort of visitor. So my thinking is that if they wanted this planet exclusive of humans, that we'd never know what hit us. It'd already be done. They've been here for so long, and the technological advantage that they have over us is so great that you explain to me what would they be holding back for? They're going to drop the bombs, the big boom someday soon. But meanwhile they're staying hidden. I don't agree.
Well, it's a simple thing to say that if that was the agenda, you and I wouldn't be talking right now. It's really that simple. It'd be a done deal. It'd be over with. And as far as any overt, definite, we don't have cases of these craft blasting destructive rays or in any way, doing any kind of overt and incontrovertible example of attempts to harm us. Sometimes things get misunderstood. Initially I subscribed to the terminology of abduction, and I thought of the ray of energy that hit me as a deliberate attack. Mm-hmm. But over the years, it just took me a long time to figure out that was probably not the case. It was more compassion.
Yeah.
I mean, not the raid.
If I did something very risky, very unexpected, and got myself hurt, and the only entity in a position to help me or rescue me was them. The nearest hospital was an hour away.
Then there's another element to this, and although that I agree with much of what you're saying right now, but there's this other message that seems to be underlying over the last couple of years on CNN and on Fox and television and so forth from the Pentagon that it's a threat. It's a threat. We need to concern ourselves with that, and that word threat has been the prevailing vibe that has been projected. Why?
And you know why?
Yeah.
Because if you're trying to get tax dollars to go somewhere,
right.
You got to scare people. I mean, if you just says let's just look into this thing because it's an intriguing curiosity, you're not going to get cooperation nearly as much as if you scare people and tell them, look, they're getting ready to take us all over.
And would your message be overall that we don't have anything to fear?
Well, I see no evidence for it yet. If somebody can show me real evidence, not just I heard this story about this guy, something that is documentable. I'm open to hear it, Just initially, the description of what happened to me sure sounded like an attack, but it just took a while to figure out the situation. We had a unique weather/geological feature with the area there as being a place that has the highest frequency of lightning strikes over land of any place in the United States. Now, these things are recorded by satellite, and so they can count them technologically. And we have a very high rate of lightning strikes here on this Mogollon Rim. It's just the way the upthrust of land there and the way the summer rainstorms come across there. But even the movie title, Fire in the Sky, is linked to this idea of the lightning strikes. At a few months before this incident happened, we were on our way to work, and then we come across a tree that had been hit by lightning the night before, and it was on fire up high. So that was one of the possibilities that we considered when we were approaching this glow coming through the trees. Could it have been another such lightning strike, fire up there, above ground level? And it also relates to what were the aliens doing there in the first place. The theory of even some of the guys on the crew, that this was some kind of a plot on their part to set a trap for one of us to capture, doesn't really hold up if you look at the other possibility. I did an interview with Rob Lowe for a TV show. Him and his sons were out investigating various paranormal activities around the country. Mm-hmm. And it was a two-part show, and the second half of the show was about a lady that deals in crystals. She sells and buys these things at these gym shows and various UFO conferences and stuff. And the thing that Rob Lowe said kind of caught me by surprise. He said, Travis says that the aliens were in the area hunting for fulgurite. And that totally shocked me because I didn't even know what fulgurite was.
Right.
But I went and looked it up online, and fulgurite are crystals that are formed when lightning strikes the Earth. You've got millions of degrees and millions of volts of energy that are forming crystals that aren't formed geologically and have they claim, unique properties, and it even lists in the book about crystals that fulgurite is supposed to have some special properties in regard to interdimensional matters. And I'd like to research that a little further and figure out what do they mean by that. But still, it answered the question that I'd had for so long about what were they doing there. We had looked into underground water supplies there at Turkey Springs. The water was down on the lower end of the contract. Various mineral deposits. The rim itself is a giant fault line, plate tectonics. That was one of the alternative explanations that a guy named Dr. Persinger came up with. That, Travis can pass a lie detector test because he believes it happened, but he was hallucinating because this blast of energy came out of the ground. It was plate tectonics, what they call earthquake lights, which electrocuted his brain in a way that made him hallucinate. But, there was no seismic correlation with any sort of sensors that are scattered over the area. And on top of that, we had 6 other men nearby that saw the same thing and didn't experience this blast of energy.
The other part of this, where we are talking about these videos that the Navy pilots have seen, certainly the eyewitness accounts. I have seen enough stuff. You and I have talked about. I've seen enough stuff that I can't explain. Is this, when we're talking about these, whether it's plasma balls or physical craft or black triangles, whatever it may be, is this a visitation that is happening right now? I mean, as you and I are speaking, are we being visited on this planet?
I believe they are. I believe we are, yes. And there's been a number of incidents and things that I've been privy to and heard from people about. But by the same token, I'll be the first person to acknowledge that not everything you hear at UFO conferences or whatever is of the same nature. I think there's some things that it's not all true. I'm sorry, but that's the way it is. There's a lot of good, solid evidence out there, and I think some of the stuff that's not sort of detracts from the value in the eyes of many people, and they sort of dismiss the whole thing. If they can point to any story that's just totally outrageous, there are skyscrapers on Venus or something, and then they just laugh the whole subject off. And so they're doing a basic truth a huge disservice by coming forward with these kind of stories. There's some stories, I'm not saying everybody that tells a story that isn't true is fabricating it. I think there are times when people experience something, perhaps in an extremely vivid dream or some altered state of consciousness, that they sincerely believe is real, but we really need to look for some sort of verifiable connection, some sort of evidence to back it up.
Now, we're going to be heading to a break. I want to get one more question before we get to the top of the hour. When we come back, we'll open up the phone lines. But when we talk about, real contact and the possibility of abduction and face-to-face encounters, there are so many, probably millions of people that have spoken about this. I don't know how big the number is. But what I'm sure you've thought about this and have looked into it because of your own experience. What do we do with that? Is it some kind of crazy mass psychosis, shared dreams?
No, not necessarily. I think there could be a core reality here that I'll explain when we come back. But the other side of the coin about, look for something verifiable, look for something the other side of that coin is absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. Just because you can't prove it doesn't prove that it's not true. It's just that in order to impress our fellow man that this is something that needs to be taken serious, well, let's just stick to the stuff we can show them has good backing basis for it. And I think that'll be in everybody's best interest. And that doesn't mean the ones that can't produce that kind of hardcore evidence are not real events. I'm just saying let's look for the ones that you can document to get the general public to take it more seriously.
And, it always comes down to that one, basic question about evidence and what somebody can prove. And this is what's strange to me, right? Somewhere out there is a planet with a spacecraft that arrived, and they got off and went, so check it out, we got Travis Walton's shirt.
Well, I'll tell you what. Well, I'll tell you about it when we get back.
Well, yeah, and that's the one thing that skeptics or debunkers or whatever will always come forward and say, well, what have you got? What were you able to? What was and that question, when it comes to me, it doesn't change my experience, Travis.
Yeah, well, here's the thing. These are people who act like this is absolute. This is what I have to have in order to believe something. Now, wait a minute. Dr. Harder pointed out that if you had 6 people saying that they had witnessed a murder, that was one of the sheriff's initial theories. If they'd come in and said, yeah, we saw Alan kill Travis out there, that's an open and shut case. If you got 6 witnesses testifying to that.
And you're gone.
In the absence of polygraph tests, but 6 witnesses who pass lie detector tests on top of that, it would be accepted if you were discussing murder. I mean, this is a death penalty case. You're going to put somebody to death on the basis of the testimony of 6 witnesses. And then suddenly, if it involves aliens, now we got all these elements of doubt that we just have to consider. Would any of these debunkers like to stand trial by a group of their peers with those kind of standards? All we got to do is, yeah.
No, you're absolutely right. And that was the one thing about the way that it played out on that first night, and the interrogations that were going down at the bar. That as soon as they brought up flying saucers, right, that changed the dynamic of everything. And you're absolutely right about that part of it. And what if? See, this is the thing. What if you didn't come back?
Well, I think somebody would have been under suspicion of murder for maybe even gone down for it. I don't know.
Right.
They might need a body, but all they'd have to do is get one of the crew to point the finger at one of the others to get the harassment off his back. But the standard of evidence needs to be sort of more uniform in what we consider. We need tremendously greater standard of evidence for something involving life on other worlds.
Let's take
we would take to convict someone of murder and
and we're getting
possibly execute them.
Yeah, we're getting closer to it too. That's the other part, and we'll talk about all of this when we come back. Our guest tonight is Travis Walton. This is night 2 of our open lines night. So I'm going to open up the phone lines now. 747-228-2051. 747-228-2051. Our guest tonight, Travis Walton. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. This is Fade to Black on the Game Changer Network and KGRA, The Planet. Stay with us. All right, welcome back. Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Tonight is night 2 of our Open Lines week here on Fade to Black. Tonight, Travis Walton. Tomorrow night, Whitley Strieber. Thursday night, Richard Dolan. An amazing week here on Fade to Black. Tonight, it's Travis. And Travis, right before the break, we started to talk about abductions and direct contact with all of these accounts. And you said you had a theory.
Yeah, well, one of the first things that skeptics ask is why don't they just land on the White House lawn and say, "Here we are, Mr. President"? Well, there's a good reason not to. And here's the deal: they could do that. What do you think the consequences would be? We've already had examples where these sightings near the White House or military installations provoke some rather panicked reactions, violent response, actually. But I don't think they really have anything to fear from us. I think their avoidance of giving us anything conclusively proof of their presence is part of the plan. It's for our own good, though. It's not nefarious. It's not like they're hiding from us because they have some sinister plan to take over the earth. I think it's very similar to what science fiction created with the so-called Prime Directive or non-interference directive. It's analogous to the early explorers sailing across the ocean blue. In almost every case where a more advanced culture encountered a less advanced one, it amounted to the destruction of the less advanced culture. And it's not helpful. As much as we would love the idea of free energy or some cool new technology, it's not to our benefit for that to happen. That kind of technology can easily backfire. It's the equivalent of the aliens saying, "Here's a brand new box of matches, now go play."
Right.
We haven't handled some of the technology that we have is a little bit ahead of our wisdom. And that's what I think the aliens are waiting on, wisdom. Some common sense, some development that we, at any moment, if we chose to, display that to them, that we do have the ability to treat each other better, treat the planet better, those kinds of things that we, sort of unimpress them by going into in the other direction.
Certainly, and that's the one message that we could understand. Right, that's something that we absolutely could relate to. But technology or the answer of life or the universe, these are technologies and an understanding that would be completely beyond us. And
yeah, well, astrophysicist Michio Kaku made a remark during an interview. He's saying, people keep imagining that these civilizations might be a few hundred years ahead of us, but they could literally be hundreds of thousands or millions of years ahead of us.
Right.
And when you think about that in terms of just about everything technological that humans have is a few hundred years old. Prior to that, the best we had was fire.
Right.
And so, and then the technology that we've developed in the last few hundred years has been very destructive of the planet, of each other, and certainly it's not their idea of helping us to give us better ways to harm each other or the planet.
I wanted to ask you this before we get to the phones, and everybody that's on hold, stay right there. We'll get to everybody. Is this, you did encounter an advanced culture. Did you relate to what you were seeing? Or was it just totally just beyond your comprehension?
Well, at the time, it was beyond my understanding because I interpreted the whole thing as totally threatening. I'm in the clutches of monsters, and all this pain and this feeling of injury is due to them. It's all their fault. And I was incorrectly blaming them for something that was actually my own fault, and they were actually trying to help, and I was doing my best to keep them from being successful at helping me.
Yeah, and I think it was Arthur C. Clarke that said it, or somebody. A technology way more advanced than our own would seem like magic. And would you say that that's quite possibly what, as you looked around and were trying to understand, this was stuff that obviously you've never seen before. Did it seem, a little magical to you?
Incomprehensible, surely. I couldn't interpret it in terms of, I wasn't completely technologically ignorant of, as far as Earth and human technology is concerned, but
right.
This was new stuff that I didn't really understand, and so I can only speculate about what it actually meant.
Right,
but
right.
It did take me years to figure out that, hey, it wasn't correct that I was assuming that this pain, this injured feeling, I felt mortally wounded. I felt like I was dying, that it was their fault. It took me a while to realize it was my fault.
You ready to start taking some calls? Travis?
Yes.
I said, are you ready to start taking some calls?
I am.
Okay, let's do it. We didn't even talk guitar. We're going to talk guitar before the end of the show. Hi, you're live on Fade to Black. Who's calling? You're live.
Hey, this is Bob.
Hey.
This is Bob from Alabama.
Hey, Bob from Alabama. Say hi to Travis.
Hey, Travis. Thank you so much for taking my call. And, Jimmy, what a great week you've got going. Travis, I've loved D.B. Sweeney and Robert Patrick and James Garner and all those guys in the movies, but I've often wondered, surely there's one piece of that movie that really sticks in your craw as they got it completely wrong. I wondered what you think that would be.
Overall, I have to be grateful that a movie was made. It got people interested in looking for the real truth. But, there were minor changes, things that didn't really materially affect the basic story, like, for instance, reducing the number of crewmen from 7. That doesn't really, that's certainly not an embellishment. But the one thing aboard the craft where the aliens were depicted as, monsters, was pushing, my take on it at the time to the very highest degree. That's one thing Hollywood does. When the aliens are depicted without clothing, it's much easier to display them as monsters. They're beasts. If they were wearing suits, then they might be, civilized. So
right.
A lot of stuff went on there. There was one fictionalization in that sequence aboard the craft that was actually an improvement, even though it didn't happen. And that was the scene where the membrane is over D.B. Sweeney's face. He's struggling to scream through it, struggling to breathe through it. The feeling of suffocation generates a panic that's beyond comprehension. Well, there was no membrane, but I did experience that feeling of suffocation. I couldn't get enough air, and the panic that came about was so intense. People were saying, "Oh, I wouldn't be that scared," but it helped to explain the degree of fear that I felt.
There you go, Bob. Bob, thank you for the phone call, man.
Thank you, Jimmy.
Have a great night. I wanted to ask you, I've never asked you about this before. Do you ever get a chance lately to talk to D.B. Sweeney and hang out and talk about the movie?
I have on occasion, but not real recently. Probably the most recent encounter has been with some of the other actors, but it was pretty cool. Encountering James Garner, he was really cool. Called me aside and wanted to tell me that look, I'm playing the part of a skeptic, but I just wanted to let you know that I do believe you guys.
Yeah, and what about? I was going to ask you the same thing about DB. How did the movie affect him? And Did he have any opinions on the UFO question?
Well, I haven't really questioned him that much. All of them in interviews have been pressed to, well, what do you think,
Right.
And all they do is quote the evidence. There's plenty of reports, and it's something they say, well, why not?
Right. Let's go back to the phones. Hi, you're live on Fade to Black. Who's calling?
Hi, Jimmy. It's Deb from Sacramento.
Hi, Deb. How are you? Say hi to Travis.
I am honored, Travis, to be able to actually speak to you. You know, when I even hear the words Travis Walton, 3 words come to my mind, and that is compassion, integrity, and honesty. So it is an honor to speak with you.
Well, thank you very much.
What you got, Deb?
Well, my question is, after all these years since your experience and everything that you know and you've learned, did that experience change your worldview on God and what happens to us after we die?
Ooh, well played.
I think that's a question that I have encountered quite a number of times. So many people assume that just acknowledging for certain that there is more advanced technology out there, that it would somehow call into question the existence of God. And I say, no, absolutely not. And you're selling God short.
Right.
Creation is infinite. The word infinite is used in the Bible, and if you think all of creation is encompassed in just Earth, and that if it's not mentioned in the Bible, it doesn't exist, I think you need to broaden your horizons a bit. American Indians aren't mentioned in the Bible. Antarctica's not mentioned in the Bible. Just because something's not in there doesn't mean that it's a false document or anything like that. I have actually shown a video of a song by a group called Hillsong, called 100 Billion X, and it's basically, a praise God sort of thing, and it's referring to the vastness of creation and the idea that creation encompass planets and galaxies and such things. And so just to help people understand that that in no way detracts from that.
But I know that you've followed, and Deb, stay right there. I know that you, follow what's going on out there. And Tom DeLonge on this program, Travis, quite stressed that there was a religious component to ET, and for everyone to be careful about this, and that there are those in the Pentagon and in the military that understand this, and their own Christianity and their own religious side of them comes into play. When those kinds of statements are made through your own experience, certainly, what do you make of that? Is there a religious component to UFOs and ET?
Of course, I'm not saying that they're totally separate and distinct, and if you think of one, you can't think of the other. Mm-hmm. I think, like I was just saying, people are limiting their thinking. But my own personal belief is that the actual truth of the Almighty, whatever spiritual powers exist, goes far beyond something with just individual sects. I mean, if the various religions on earth don't have things in common, then what are we talking about here?
Right.
It's the separation and the division is not constructive; it's destructive, and is at the root of much violence in the world today.
Well, what about the flip side of that? You and I, we hitch a ride, right, on some starship, right? We take off, and we visit their planet, and we step off and say hello to everybody. I mean, are we going to see a church, right? You know what I mean? Is there going to be the God-Jesus component throughout the universe?
Well, I'm sure there are some people who would say, heck yeah, but I would say, I don't know. You know, just how this, the truth about creation and the whole giant picture all fits together is something that I think we don't know yet, and probably because we're not ready for it. We need to be worthy of larger truths and capable of handling it.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, people are going to be so resistant to anything other than what they already think.
Deb, thank you for the phone call.
Thank you. Thanks, guys. Thank you so much, Travis.
Thank you, Deb. Great phone call right there. And Travis, you know, you bring up, it said so much, and I hate saying it, but the flying saucer on the White House lawn. But let's say it does happen, and the stair steps fold down, and we're all watching, and it's live on TV, and then we see the being's feet, and then we start to see his torso, and he's coming down the stairs, and then we see his face, and it's Jesus. Right? What do we do with that? You know, and I've often thought about that. And wouldn't that be the first series of questions? Because certainly the Vatican is on board with this right now.
Yeah, the Vatican did finally come forward. You remember that with the history of Galileo, he was actually, under severe condemnation from the church for saying that there were even planets out there, and house arrest, all kinds of serious consequences. But eventually they came around to apologizing for that. And it wasn't, it's been a few years, but my son was dating a Catholic girl, and her priest called her aside and said, "You've got to get away from that boy. His father has been consorting with demons." And so she broke up with him, and that was the end of that relationship.
No.
Really, it was only a matter of weeks or months after that the Vatican came out and said there's absolutely no sin whatsoever in believing that there's life on other worlds.
And didn't they even say that they would baptize E.T., right? Something, some comment like that. E.T. deserves to have a baptism too, and we would welcome that. It was some comment like that. I thought, it seems like they know something. Seems like they know what's going on.
So much of this stuff is speculative and unproven, and even if they have inside information, how do we verify it?
Yeah, and you're right. After everything they did to Galileo, and now they own observatories all over the world, right? So,
yeah.
Let's go back to the phones. Hi, you're live on Fade to Black. Who's calling?
This is Walt.
Hey, Walt.
Walton, Travis Walton.
I got some news for you. Travis.
Yeah?
Yeah, I got some news. I emailed you and I told you about, what that, whatever ray hit you, about the helicopter thing, and you kind of changed your idea on what happened. But here's the news for you. 1955 and 1965, two things in my life that were really unique. 55, I was abducted. I saw two types of aliens, a tall and two short. And I can describe them to this day, something you never forget. In 1965, I had a teacher that was the brother-in-law of Phil Corso, and I was friends with his nephew. And I was given the secret information back in 1965 that Phil Corso wrote in his book. And a lot of people, like Stanton Friedman, used to criticize him and said it was all, phony. Well, if it was phony, why did I get the same information back in 65 that he wrote in 1997?
Well, Stan Friedman was a great friend of mine, and I feel his loss deeply, and he did a great deal of good for the field of ufology, but I didn't agree with him on every single point, There was a few places where I didn't agree, but that's neither here nor there. It doesn't have to be 100% to be quite beneficial. He did a lot of good work.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more, Travis. And I butted heads with him. So much respect. He was so much fun to hang out with, and just a genuine guy. And he could be insanely funny as well. He had a great sense of humor. But I butted heads with him too. And I was so intimidated, I chickened out, Travis. I just backed up.
Well, he's got the credentials. We don't.
Yeah, exactly.
But, I give him lots of credit for, he was one of the few researchers who actually came to Snowflake before passing any kind of judgment, visited me in my home, visited the site, spoke with all of the crewmen, did physical examination of things, and further, the various theories that the debunkers threw out there, he dug up evidence that showed them to be raving maniacs and idiots and fools, because there was verifiable data that they should have uncovered if they were seriously investigating this, rather than just coming up with a conclusion and scrambling looking for some way to justify it.
Right. Well, Walt, thank you for the phone call.
Well, I wasn't trying to rag on Friedman.
Say that again.
I wasn't trying to marginalize, demonize, or discredit the man and his work. I do like what he did. He did a lot of good. I was just upset when he criticized information that I got firsthand many years earlier. And the other thing, Travis, what the aliens look like. I can still describe it, and I don't know if you have ever done that or not, but I can tell you exactly what the little ones look like and the big ones. And I wasn't sure which one.
Well, I'll tell you what, there's
ones.
probably far more species than anybody. Some people say, there are 15 species in visiting the Earth. No, there's 27 species. How would anybody know such a thing?
Right.
Their visitations are so clandestine that, I don't think anybody knows the total, and it probably changes day to day. I think that's kind of an irrelevant point. But one thing I disagreed with Stan about was he was basically saying this guy can't be telling the truth because he wasn't in the phone book, the government phone book. And I said, no, wait a minute. Absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. If they wanted to keep somebody's employment secret, then one of the first things you do is not publish a phone book with their name in it.
Yeah, we've got to take a break. Hey, Walt, thank you for the phone call.
Thanks, Jim.
Yeah, thank you. You bring up, I've got about 30, 45 seconds, but you bring up one of my favorite points, Travis, that there are 1 trillion stars in our Milky Way, right there, just 1 trillion, 1 trillion planets, which says to me, just with that crazy number, there are millions of civilizations out there. And and a large chunk of that knows about planet Earth.
Yes. Now, I've often brought up the point that not all of these civilizations are older than us. Some of them are like cave aliens, but those aren't the ones that are coming here. They're every range of development from very primitive to extremely advanced with technology and science and knowledge and intelligence far beyond anything we can even imagine.
Yeah, and if we had the opportunity, to go interstellar and go to a planet that is in that evolutionary stage, what are we going to suddenly show them what a smartphone is and how to build computers? No, we wouldn't.
Or how to build a nuclear bomb? No, I don't think so.
It's not going to happen. Let's take our break right here. Our guest tonight, Travis Walton. This is night 2 of our call-in week here on Fade to Black. Tonight, Travis Walton. Tomorrow night, Whitley Strieber. Thursday night, Richard Dolan. We'll be right back after this short break with more of your phone calls. Stay right there. Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Our guest tonight, Travis Walton. Open lines all night long. 747-228-2051. 747-228-2051. And Travis, before we get back to the phones, I want to ask you that. I don't want you to be uncomfortable, but here's an uncomfortable question. Do you feel that you are monitored? Does ET know where you are now? Do you think they've followed you since 1975?
I used to be adamant. No. This was just a random act, and it was just, I walked away, and, if I stay away from things that I see, I'm perfectly safe. But I think the opposite now. Not only am I monitored, I think we all are. And you might say, how's that possible? Well, I'm looking at this little cell phone in my hand and thinking about the Utah data center, where the United States government, comparatively millions of years perhaps less developed than the alien culture, is capable of recording every single electronic communication on the face of the earth.
Right.
Now, if our primitive technology can handle that, certainly they can handle keeping track of individuals. I actually think, contrary to what I used to think, that if you saw one as a child and you see one as an adult, they know it's you, and they know about the connection.
Do you think that you have possibly communicated, or that they are understanding your frame of mind?
Yep, but I can't prove it, so, I can say all kinds of things. I'll tell you what, I am absolutely certain of their presence in a variety of forms, but I can't prove it, and I actually sort of hid that. The inquiry was, have you ever seen one before? Even at APRO at the time, the Aerial Phenomena Research Organization,
right,
called anybody that had had more than one experience a quote-unquote repeater, and cast huge doubt on their report, because they thought the odds against such a sighting or an encounter were so vastly tiny that if you had more than one, that it defied the odds. Well, I don't think that's true at all. I think that more than one sighting or experience is probably experienced pretty commonly across the planet. Now, why don't they come forward and say, hi, Jimmy, good to see you again. And, that thing we did when you were 6 years old, forgive us for that.
Right.
No, really, I think the connection is there, and they don't need to make us aware of it, but I think they're aware of it, and it's not that. It's just data, right? Huge amounts of information, and that'd be probably the first thing that they would master.
Do you ever go out, look up at the stars, and go, okay, come on back. I've got questions now. We didn't finish the first time around.
I definitely think there's some unfinished business here, but I don't think I can summon them. I think they are keeping an eye on things, and they're going to look. The thing that people say is, how come all of these experiences that people have are always just short of absolute proof? How come we don't have, real clear photographs of them, or, that sort of thing? Well, because they're in control of that. They're not stupid. They're extremely intelligent, and the degree of provability that humans are allowed is just deliberately just shy of anything that's going to create that kind of huge disruption. Even the gun camera footage the Navy pilots got, it's just shy of something. At that point, all they can say is, well, this is something that can behave in ways that nothing we know of can. It's nothing like, hey, we got a good clear shot of aliens peeking out the window or something. It's not going to be like that, and I don't expect it to be. I think these glimpses are not a case where these beings are slapping their forehead and saying, oops, damn, a human spotted me again. I guess I better be more careful next time.
Right.
Not at all. I think that they're smart enough and have the technology where they could do everything they're doing here and remain completely undetected. I think the glimpses that people are getting are nudging us towards an acceptance of a reality that we need to be aware of, but not in such an abrupt way as to create a panic or worldwide economic collapse or something, the kinds of bad consequences that could happen if they rushed it.
Yeah, and we didn't collapse 2 years ago in 2017 for sure. Let's go back to the phones. Hi, you're live on Fade to Black. Who's calling?
Hi, Jimmy. It's Sandy in Dallas.
Hi, Sandy. Say hi to Travis Walton.
Oh, hi, Travis. I love you, Travis.
Hi.
Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Right on, Sandy. What have you got for Travis tonight?
All right, I'm going to change it up. Hey, Travis, do you know Q?
I'm listening.
What was the question?
Do you know Q?
The
17th letter in the alphabet.
Okay.
Are you following? Okay, so what Sandy is referencing is there is this person or group, it's not really known for sure, that has been posting out there on a few different forums that goes by the name Q.
Well, the latter part of this show is Q&A, so had me there for a second.
Have you been following this Q stuff?
No, I haven't.
Okay. Well, there's your answer, Sandy. So, Sandy, I'll give you one.
Right.
Do you have a second question for Travis?
Well, God bless you guys. Thank you.
All right, Sandy. Enjoy the rest of your night.
You guys too. Take care.
I've really got my hands full. It's hard to keep up with everything.
Yeah, and there is. I'll send you some info tomorrow. Over the last couple of weeks, there's been this data drop of images and video and text that was allegedly found on a USB drive over in Germany. We've got the files now, and some of the videos have been posted, and it's very interesting. That's all I can say. Is this the biggest UFO story of the century? I don't know. Is this a game that's being played? I don't know, but there's a lot of data that we're going through now. I'll send you some more on that tomorrow. Let's go back to the phones. Hi, you're live on Fade to Black. Who's calling? You're live.
Oh, me?
Yes.
Are you talking to me?
Yeah, you.
Yes, you.
Oh, hey, I'm Neil. Rubber Show, buddy. How you doing?
Hi, Neil. How are you tonight?
Oh, man, I've been working on the elements. I'm doing that scientific research. I found out some stuff about cotton seeds, and coffee. Coffee works like salt, man. You pour that stuff around your car and stuff, them darn spirits can't stand it, dude.
Okay, Neil. Well, I drink a lot of coffee, so I'm always in the safe zone. What do you have for Travis tonight?
Is he a UFO guy?
Travis Walton?
Yeah.
Neil, you need to get some sleep.
No. Well, look. All right, I just called in. I saw his freak calls, and I wanted to talk to the guy, but I'm sorry I don't know much about him.
That's okay.
But I'm doing the Open Eye Project. I'm the one that sees the invisible dimensions. Maybe I could ask him a question about why am I the only one doing this research? It seems like there should be more of us doing it.
Well, you're not the only one. There's lots of people doing it, and there are many people who make fun of us who are doing this kind of research. But it comes with the territory. So, roll with the punches.
Yeah. Neil, you got to go with what you believe in, man, and never stop.
Oh, I'm fighting. Look, I figured out I bind demons all the way to Mars, dude. This Halloween, I found some demons, and I tied them up behind their back, dude. I'm fighting a war. And look, they got this darkness. I want to talk to you about it. The elements I was working with, when I started burning the darkness, the spirit started saying in the dimension, it says, the darkness is burning, and a bunch of them started saying, burn, burn, keep on burning the darkness. So with my consciousness, and I was using the elements, I figured a way to burn this darkness, okay? And it's working.
Okay. So, I'd like to talk to you about it another time. Absolutely, Neil.
Yeah, I was talking to Eric. I said, Darren, Eric, I was hoping Eric would try to get me on your show, you know, be a guest or whatever, because, look, I found out some great stuff, and I'm fighting a battle, dude.
All right, Neil. Well, tonight it's about Travis Walton, so I'll let you go for now, but the next Fader night, call in, and we'll have a longer chat.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you so much, Neil. And goes right back to what we were just talking about earlier, though, Travis. The religious component of this is something that we can't ignore. But for me, it's not necessarily directly what Neil was referring to. I'm referring to ancient history and religion and angels and communication to the stars and information coming from the stars and you know, somebody has spoken to us. I've always felt that if you exchange I don't want to sound like some heretic, but if you exchange angels in the Bible with aliens or ET, you've got a pretty solid story there. One that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, it can sometimes be interchangeable in people's interpretation of things. They just didn't know how else to describe it, you know. Even the early Native Americans didn't call them aliens. They called them the sky people. And it's just, you know, what you have to figure it in terms of what you know.
Yeah, because, you know, 2,000 years ago, if you're in communication with something like that, some ET being, you're not going to go back to the village and try to explain to them ET.
You might be burned at the stake.
Right. You got to go with God. I just met with God, and he said, well, okay, then there won't be any panic in the streets. Let's go back to the phones. Hi, you're live on Fade to Black. Who's calling?
Hello, Jimmy. It's Eric, the Awakening Man.
Hey, Eric. How are you? Say hi to Travis.
Hello, Mr. Walton. How are you, sir?
I'm fine.
We've had the opportunity to meet a few times. You'd probably recognize me if you saw me, but I want to ask you two questions. Take your time with the answer. The first question is, in that moment, that going back to 74 or 75, when you got out of the truck and this, I'm just going to call it this energy that came from this source, whether it was a craft or whatever, it came and it knocked you back.
Yeah.
Okay. Now looking back now, you have the discernment and the hindsight and everything that you've been able to learn. Why do you think that that was a conscious source? It seems to me that whatever it was that fired that energy at you, I don't even know if fired is the right word, but directed that energy at you, it was conscious, and it did that for a reason. Why do you think that was?
Well, that's a leap that I made at first, but I no longer go there. You know, I think that this energy discharge could have had something to do with me getting too close and just being something that would ground the energy. Now, earlier in the show, I described the high frequency of lightning strikes in the rim area there. Well, this high energy, I mean, it's been so high that I've actually seen what looked like lightning coming out of a clear blue sky. I mean, it's a charge that's there. Now, just what if the craft itself generated some sort of an electromagnetic field that triggered a strike, and this blast of just simple lightning hit the craft, and me being the next closest thing to ground was a secondary discharge. So some kind of a freak accident, possibly injuring or killing me, and nobody can fix it but them. Nearest hospital's an hour away. None of the crew knows CPR. and it was more of a rescue than an attack.
That's the impression I got. And I mean, I've been researching for about 4 years, and I'm not going to tell you this because I'm trying to make you feel good, but I honestly haven't met anyone that's come close to that's as believable as you are. Not even in the same ballpark. And what I wanted to ask you is, May 3rd, 2018, I was listening to you talk on a radio show. It was about 6:30 at night. I was driving from Arizona to California. I was going to go to Joshua Tree. This is going to be a real quick story. Took a right on Kelbecker Road, went into the Mojave Dunes near Kelso, and I pulled over 7 miles in because I was losing cell service, and I wanted to hear what you were saying. And I saw this object, and Jimmy knows this story. I'm going to say it was about 40 feet around. It was about 100 yards away. It was in the sky. It was still light out. It was reflective. It looked chrome to me, but the reason why I even tell you this story is because when I saw that in the daylight, I became convinced that the phenomena was real. That's what it took for me to get to the point where I wasn't abducted. I didn't have any missing time, but I became a believer. And so I went on a research tear, and I came across this guy, Eric Mitchell, and I got to talk to him quite a bit on Facebook, and he allowed me to interview him. And he did mention that he spent some time with you. And I'm wondering, Are you comfortable talking all about that experience and your time that you spent with him and what you thought about his story? Because it seems like not a lot of people know much about him, but I think his story, to me, feels very genuine. Can you comment on that at all?
Yeah. And, he's had some lasting effects that really ought to be checked out. I mean, it's right there. Researchers can see it for themselves. So I think his case is particularly interesting. But, I've seen things a number of times going back to my childhood that make me absolutely certain that the phenomena is real. Now, it's not impossible for somebody to convince me that it's not really aliens, it's the government pretending to be aliens. That's not impossible. Highly, highly unlikely that we possess that kind of technology and keep it a secret. I mean, how many secrets get kept, But if somebody can give me evidence that gives me a reason to believe it's something other than what I think it is,
right,
I'll listen. I don't begin with a conclusion. That's what the debunkers do. They start with a conclusion and then look for ways to justify it.
And I wanted to, staying on this, where the MyLab phenomenon that is out there. So many people have shared these experiences, and I think about that, some type of staged, alien abduction to maybe plant memories or ideas, or to cover up an actual sighting that may be in the area. There's that part of it. There's that component.
Or to frighten our enemies. Who knows?
That's right. And then there's this other part of it, where there have been so many abduction experiences that have had military in uniform people standing in the background, almost as observers. Not part of the abduction, but they seem to be involved for some reason.
Unless they're impersonators or imposters, who knows? And if there is some sort of a thing that's created by the government, it doesn't remove the possibility that there's another real phenomenon totally aside from them. It doesn't have to be one or the other. Just like many of the explanations, sometimes even some of the explanations the debunkers grab a hold of, but they act like, well, I've solved the entire mystery if I can prove any one case is really a meteor or satellite falling from the sky or whatever. Each case stands on its own, and you don't judge the entire phenomenon on the basis of any single case.
Well, while I have Eric on the line, let me ask you this. Is there a case out there that even for you raise an eyebrow and go, okay, you've got my attention? Is there one that stands out for you?
Oh, yeah, certainly. But I can't go down the line and start picking and choosing. I say, well, how about this one? How about that one? And then, the ones that I don't say yes to, then I just, it gets kind of complicated. I've tried to stay away from passing judgment on cases that I haven't investigated personally, and that's all of them.
Right.
I've been so involved in trying to, research and do regards to my own case that, I've really gotten my hands full. There's some really exceptional cases, and there's some really bad ones. Let me tell you about some of the bad ones. I won't be specific with identifying individuals, but there's 2 or 3 individuals who are coming out, and all of a sudden they're saying, I was inside the government. I knew the whole damn thing, and here I'm laying it all out there. Section this, column this, organization this, alphabet soup labels. But these 3 or 4 different people that know the whole story, not one detail is the same for each of them. So I go, okay, all right, maybe they're all true, but it certainly doesn't add support for people to be saying that I was inside, I knew all this, I was privy to the details of the which department was in charge here, which authority ruled this, all this kind of stuff, and they don't agree with each other. It's just a question.
Well, is there before we head to the break? For you, I am sure that there are details still with your own experience that you haven't shared. And I understand that I'm not asking for those details. But people come up to you all the time and share their experiences. Have you had that moment where somebody is telling you about what has happened and they say something that only you know? Where you pump the brakes and go, oh, holy crap, okay, I need to pay attention here. Has that happened?
Yeah, there are cases like that, that, I guess you'd call it ringing a bell, but, there are cases where ring true with things that are familiar. And, but like I say, I'm not going to list them chapter and verse. I got a whole litany of descriptions on belief, not belief, and disbelief. We have to define our terms here. If I believe X, that means I hold it to be true. If you ask me if I do believe it and I say no, that doesn't mean I disbelieve it. I just haven't put it in the category of one that I know to be true. And a lot of people don't understand that at all. They think, what? Oh, you're splitting hairs here? It's kind of like a court verdict, where they say this guy's verdict was innocent. Well, this guy's verdict over here is not guilty. Now, what's the difference? Well, there is a huge difference. Innocent means the government found out that you couldn't have done it. You were in another state, or somebody else did it, whatever, or the crime never occurred, whatever. That's innocent. But not guilty means that the state was unable to have sufficient evidence to reach the level of something that you'd call proof. And it's a whole different thing. And in either case, the person walks free, but they're 2 different things altogether. So when people say, do you believe that? And I say, no, that doesn't mean I'm disbelieving it. It just means I haven't, adopted it into the truth box. It's a different box.
Right. And I wanted to ask you this. I've been looking forward to this conversation. We recently had Calvin Parker on the show. And I'll say it out of the gate. What a great guy. What a great personality. His feet are on the ground. And I think he's very honest and genuine. His particular experience was brief and doesn't have the hallmarks of spectacular and fantastical. It was just very brief, and it happened, and he's laid it out there. And I'm sure you're very familiar with Calvin, but what do you make of Calvin and his experience and how he came out of the other side?
Well, he's handled the media storm very well, and I have not investigated his case, so My personal impression of him as a person was positive, but I haven't investigated his case, so that's another one. I'm not going to pass judgment on these other famous cases.
Yeah, that Calvin and the way that he has described it, and we just had a fantastic show with him. That happened. The way I believe it happened exactly as he says it did. I truly do. Travis, I'm telling you, it is just an unbelievably great story. We got to take a break right here. Eric, thank you. And by the way, Travis, Eric is my apprentice. In about 3 or 4 years, he's going to have his own show. Thank you so much,
Great.
Eric. Enjoy the rest of your week, man. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Travis. Have a good night.
You too. Thank you so much. And our guest tonight is Travis Walton. This is Fade to Black. It's night 2 of call-in week here on Fade to Black. Tonight, Travis. Tomorrow night, Whitley Strieber. Thursday night, Richard Dolan. Of course, we had Billy Carson yesterday on Monday. This is Fade to Black. More with Travis and your phone calls when we come back. Stay with us. All right, welcome back. Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Tonight, Travis Walton. Open lines all night long. 747-228-2051. We've got one segment left. And, Travis, I wanted to throw this out. Do you feel chosen?
Oh, no. I don't think of myself as special at all, or chosen or singled out or anything. I'm just the guy that got too close. So.
Just the guy that got too close. Yeah, I would say that that is the case. Wait, let's go back to the phones. I want to stay on that thought, though. Hi, you're live on Fade to Black. Who's calling?
Hi, this is Ward.
Hi, Ward.
Hey, listen. Hi, Jimmy. Hi, Travis. I got a couple quick questions. Travis, when you're up with the aliens, did you have a sense that they had a hierarchy? And also, did you get a feeling that they had different sexes?
I did not perceive any hierarchy, anything involving authority. The Greys seemed to act in unison, very simultaneous sort of motion. The humans look to be typically male and female, but I didn't detect any sort of insignia depicting rank or any of that sort of thing. I didn't see anything that would suggest to me authority, but not to say it didn't exist. I just didn't see it.
But there was a female that you've described many times in the past.
Yeah. These people were physically attractive, great physical shape.
There you go, Ward. Thank you so much for the phone call. Yeah, absolutely. And I remember asking you if the female had worn makeup or perfume or any feminine side to her at all. What do you remember that question? And can you answer it again?
Well, you might have asked the question, but I really don't remember being able to tell the difference.
Right.
It's not anything I'm skilled at finding. She could have been without such enhancements, or if she had them, they were not so overdone that I would have noticed. But sorry, I was in too big of a panic, screaming my head off, and beside myself with fear to be minutely examining their appearance.
Yeah, and the female identification part, was it because of her facial features, hair, body, feminine body parts? What?
All of the above. Yes, all of the typical human society signals were there.
Gotcha. Let's go back to the phones. Hi, you're live on Fade to Black. Who's calling?
Hey, this is Jason from Salt Lake City.
Hey, Jason. Say hi to Travis.
Hey, Travis. Thanks for doing the show. It's a pleasure to get to talk to you. It's kind of cool.
Yeah, right on.
Thanks for calling, Jason.
Yeah, I just wanted to know what your thoughts, being with everything you've gone through, on the simulation hypothesis, and if you believe that's true, where do you think these folks would play into it at? If it's all right, I would actually pop back off there because it's about 4:19, and I would love to listen to the show live on the radio. That's all right with you guys.
Yeah, there you go. Thank you so much, Jason.
Thanks, Jimmy. Thank you.
Absolutely. Travis, the simulation, that we're living in a holographic, binary, computer-generated, electronic, right, simulation. What do you think? So much talk about that these days.
Well, if it's so perfect that we can't tell, then I don't know. I don't believe that's the case. But that doesn't mean I disbelieve it. It just means I don't really see anything compelling to tell me that this is all an illusion, or that we're on a flat Earth, or that it's hollow, or there's a number of things that, well, if you really go, well, what about this, what about this, what about this, you could maybe build the case for something, but why would I put that over the belief that I already hold? I mean, why is that?
Would you be okay with it, though? I mean, you're right. If you can't tell the difference,
it has to be whatever is. And
right.
That's the problem. So many of these skeptics and debunkers are. They're upset, like as if you're mad enough about something, you can make it go away. No, you can't. Whatever is, and you don't. Your acceptance or rejection of it has nothing to do with its reality. Well, that needs to be pursued on its own merits.
Yeah, that's right. And, aliens and E.T. and us being alone or not in the universe, that's a fundamental question. And I have an open mind with just about everything, Travis. But
well, if just looking at it from the outside, I keep bringing up the example of people saying, well, if you think that is so far outside the mainstream that you're a kook. And I say, no, actually, if you think we're alone in the universe, that makes you the kook. But if you're holding firm to a belief, you have no justification. You can't in any way prove to me that we're alone in the universe, but you cling to that so rabidly, that's irrational. You're the kook. And if you just examine the science behind it, a galaxy of trillions of stars, trillions of planets, and many of them far older than us, and you're going to sit there and say, well, they might exist, but they just don't come here. Well, how do you know that? What makes you so certain of that?
Is Flat Earth taking it just a bit too far, though?
Yeah, I think that's taking it a bit too far.
What do you make of the flat earthers out there? Are they doing it just because they want to debate for sport? That they know
maybe vast conspiracies that everything we think we know is all false and it's all created just to fool us. Well, there would have to be one heck of a lot of people in on this conspiracy, and why would they?
Yeah, half of the planet would be in on the conspiracy. I mean, half of the planet.
Why would they participate in such a thing? What's the motive?
I just think they want to debate. They just, some people just like to argue. You've got friends that no matter what you say, I love peach pie. Oh, peach pie sucks. Let me tell you why.
Create a stir. Create a stir.
Let's go back to the phones. Hi, you're live on Fade to Black. Who's calling?
Jim, this is Ron from Chicago, and I do have to say this. You have got the best radio station ever. You are number one to me in Chicago. We listen to you. We love you. We love your program, and I'm telling you, you're the best. You are the best. Travis, there are just two things I wanted to ask you, and please bear with me. When you were inside that craft, okay? You were inside that craft, and you woke up. I wanted to ask you, how did you breathe with the oxygen? So was the oxygen as same as it was, let's say, when you were outside of the craft? And
well, I'm not sure about that. Let me just answer that question first. The feeling of suffocation could have been due to the injury of being struck by that blast of energy. That alone could explain it. Or the atmosphere in there was not quite correct for humans. It's one or the other, And how would I know?
Well, And the second question I wanted to ask you is this, and please bear with me. What makes us think they're from outer space or from another planet? What if they're actually here somewhere on the Earth? And now, the question I wanted to ask you was, did they look like us?
Well, some of them did, but could they be from Earth? You know, and then some people have said, well, maybe they didn't come from another planet. Maybe they come from our past or our future. You know, well, not
so let me ask.
There's all kinds of theories that, like we were talking earlier. You know, you can explain everything you see with this other explanation, but you have to have a justification to prefer that one over the current understanding.
And Travis, the last question I wanted to ask you, because there are some questions that I'm trying to, is there a female and a male if they look like us?
Well, I think the human-looking ones were probably chosen or perhaps even created, simulated, I don't know, just because I was so combative with the ones that were non-human that I was not going to cooperate, and if I didn't, I was going to die. And so they needed something I would trust more than them, and whether it's another species that looks like us, or they created something that would just inspire confidence in me, I don't know. But
okay, Rob, you got to let Travis finish talking. Okay.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Okay.
But the humanoids were very good to you, right? They didn't hurt you, did they?
Well, let's define the word humanoid. A humanoid is something with 2 arms, 2 legs, a head on top, eyes in the front. A human-looking being is, could pass in a crowd. Even the Greys are humanoid. Bigfoot is humanoid. That's just a description of a man-like creature. You know, Hollywood. You know, any of the monsters, most of the monsters in Hollywood could be a man in a suit, and those are all humanoid because the general outline of the being is kind of like human.
Well, yeah, Rob, before I let you go, why are you asking these questions so specifically? Have you made contact yourself?
God, Jim, I called you once about a craft that I seen, and what I seen was phenomenal. And yes, I have. I'm an engineer. I also work for the government. And I work in Chicago, and I was told not to say much of anything because if you do, it may backfire. But here's what I seen. And now, Travis, if I recall, years ago I was listening to you, and I think you said you saw a screen inside the ship, like a viewing screen. Am I correct or am I wrong?
Well, that's an analogy, but basically I think it was either using the entire surface of the interior of this one room as a screen, or there was some technology that allowed the surroundings to be viewed through the walls of the craft.
Well, I never, this is the honest truth, believe me or not, but I am telling you the truth because I do take drug testing every 2 months of my job for drugs and what have you. So I do get tested, and I don't drink alcohol, I don't take drugs or what have you. But I will tell you this: when I seen this craft, I also saw a screen, like if you were going to a movie theater, but a very big screen in the ear of a woman looking at me, and her clothing were very, very, how do I say, Romanish, like from Rome, back in those days. And I went to the Art Institute to try to find what kind of century it was of the way she was dressed. But I noticed that she looked like us. And that's the reason why I'm asking you if they were human looking. Thank you for taking my call.
Yeah, absolutely, okay. Rob, and thank you for that. That part of it, Travis, I actually cleared out the phone lines, so I can maybe squeeze in one more call, 747-228-2051. But is this, if E.T. is observing this planet, no matter what the civilization is, they certainly know all about us. We give them enough information with our bad radio and TV. signals going out there. But they have the opportunity to observe. They know our history. They've been here for a long time,
Yes.
checking us out. And if they're going to come down here and interface with us, they're not going to freak us out. They're going to send a representation of something that we could relate to, right? Just as you're describing, it would be.
Well, if they have other species that happen to, out of the hundreds or maybe thousands of species that happen to look a whole lot more like us, or some people have the theory that we were seeded here by a group, and that's the reason we look like them. But for whatever reason, that would be the best choice for an emissary, somebody that looks like us. But see, that's our big failing. The aliens see how we treat each other and mistreat each other on the basis of some really superficial differences in appearance and customs and whatnot. And if we behave like that towards each other humans, just on the basis of a difference in appearance, well, how do you think they're going to get along walking amongst us? You see grays walking around. You would not. I know what would happen. The conspiracy theories and paranoid illusions about what the grays were really up to and all this sort of thing. It's already started, as a matter of fact. Just the fact that they're telepathic makes them not use facial expression. And a lot of people just, they call these people, the grays, robotic. They've lost touch with emotion. They can't feel anymore. No. When you become telepathic, then you don't need a frown or a smile or, raised eyebrow or anything to add to your expression. The telepathic communication is far richer, not dead and wooden. So, already we're creating myths about them, about how they can't feel and they're heartless and, machine heads. And I don't believe that's warranted.
Men in Black, Travis. Men in Black.
Yeah.
Okay. Two simple questions. Have you had contact with what you feel could be Men in Black? And if you haven't, do you think that the reports of Men in Black are credible?
Yeah, I think they are, because one of our crew reported seeing them sitting in a sedan with a government license plate watching his house, So, we had some evidence that, the government was monitoring things for a while. I don't know that they still are, but it was very curious that there was nothing directed my way. And, I'm the center point of this story, and yet even the debunkers made no attempt to contact me directly. Not one letter, not one phone call. And yet, Mike was deluged with such attempts to communicate, quote unquote.
And why do you think it was, not only with class, but with others, that absolutely wanted to mess with you mentally, physically?
It was the biggest threat to their ideology that they so dearly held that they had ever come along. But bottom line is, every single theory that they threw out there was disproved in ways where most of them, they actually involved deception on the part of these so-called debunkers. They're actually lying in order to create a false narrative about the falseness of our report. Basically trying to claim all sorts of things that were disproved by the evidence. Oh, Travis was out hallucinating on drugs.
Right.
I had blood and urine put through the county medical examiner's drug screen. That's a law enforcement entity, and yet this drug hallucination theory can still be found floating around out there, because if you really want to disbelieve something, you'll find a way to justify it.
How did you find the survival instincts because they tried to crack you, right? Literally tried to break you down.
Worked,
Right.
I did some pretty, I was brought to my knees almost in a way, I was looking for people who would accept me. I almost got sucked into some cults. you talk about the confusion between ufology and religions. Well, there were some cults that turned out to be quite dangerous that tried to get me involved with them.
And I kind of want to end on this because of your experience over the last 45 years. Is this the infiltration of ufology? The Richard Doty's of the world, and that nefarious dark side of what may be happening. Is that something that we need to be concerned with? And have you experienced that where you have raised an eyebrow looking at somebody and wondering if they were, not only part of the government, but to spread disinfo?
Well, yeah, I believe that's certainly very possible that such things happen, and a lot of this stuff strongly resembles that. And here's the deal: in many cases, it comes down to this. I say to them, "How do you know this?" It seems like a very simple question to say, "What verifiable facts can you point me to where I'll be as certain of that as you are?" And that's where they stutter and stammer and can't really answer. And it comes down to that. The people who are trying to spread false ideas can't back it up. It all comes down to facts and reasoning. Are your facts true and complete? And is your reasoning valid according to basic principles of logic that have been in existence for hundreds of years?
One last phone call. Hi, you're live on Fade to Black. Who's calling?
Hey, Jimmy, it's Scott.
Hey, Scott. Say hi to Travis.
Hi, Travis.
Hey, Scott.
Got a question for you, and I've always wanted to ask you this, and every time I see you, I just forget about to ask you. When you were on that ship and you woke up, what details did you see? Did you see textures? I mean, did you see patterns on the floor, on the walls, on the ceiling? Did you see anything that was detailed enough where you could look at, like, screens or any type of metal? I mean, was it all just clear? Or
oh, yeah. I've as best I could, described those surfaces in my book. But, it's not really all that significant to go into here. But, nothing that you could say, aha, that is definitely an alien texture, or that's definitely a human Earth source tech. I couldn't say one way or the other on.
Yeah.
Getting at.
And Scott, thank you for the phone call and the question. And
you're welcome, sir.
Yeah,
welcome.
Absolutely. And that's a question that I'm sure you get asked nearly every single day, right? There's no question about it. But it's what people wonder about. That's it. When you were on the ship, when you woke up, I mean, that's the leading question, right? And
yeah, well, I go, they say, what was that like? And I describe it as best I can. But, I don't think that the description is really so outside of anything recognizable that I'm going to be able to, create for them a visual image of something that you just couldn't imagine, they're all just,
Did I hear a guitar? Are you?
Yeah,
you have you.
It's sitting in my lap.
That's what I'm talking about. Okay, before I let you go, the question that's on everybody's mind. There's been some chatter, the possibility of a remake or another version of Fire in the Sky. Any truth to these rumors?
Yes, there's quite a bit of truth to these rumors, and there's actually a number of entities that are interested, and it's all up in the air.
Okay, so
to coin a phrase.
Well, right on for that. And where are we going to see you next?
I'm just going to be at Phoenix MUFON in December 7th. That's my next thing.
Okay.
And then the season kind of slows down during winter.
And then 2020, are you going to be out there all year?
Yeah, I got lots of stuff lined up and a lot of invitations to which I haven't replied. So, but the place to check it all out is at traviswalton.com, my website, where I try to keep my schedule current.
Yeah, and we've got the links right there at jimmychurchradio.com. It's Travis-Walton.com, but we've got the links right there at jimmychurchradio.com. Travis, great conversation tonight. Thank you for hanging out with us, audience. And again, for everything that you have done for myself personally and this community, we all thank you. Thank you, Travis.
Well, thank you. Thanks for having me. There's dozens of documentaries out there. Some of them are quite exceptional. And of course, my book. You can order that through my website.
Yeah, and Jennifer's documentary to this day was so well done, and being able to pull everybody together. It's just tremendous, and
an hour and a half of very exceptional interviewing everybody, all of the crew, the sheriff, actors, just a whole lot of detail that nobody else had.
No, and to see it, finally, all compiled, but it's the way that her direction and the way that it was put together. It's one of the best documentaries out there, period. So she was great.
Yeah, I was lucky that she was doing the thinking and didn't have anybody pulling her strings, and it turned out very, very exceptional.
Jennifer Stein, and that's what you get, right? You just hand it off and let her do her thing.
Oh, yeah. Uh-huh.
Absolutely.
It's the Travis is the name. I would never name it myself, but she did. I'll give her that. Travis is the name of the documentary, and it's On Wings production. You can order her stuff from her.
Thank you so much, Travis. Enjoy the rest of your night. Go and play some guitar.
All right, I will.
Thank you, Travis.
Yeah, good night.
Travis Walton. What a great conversation. And again, the links for Travis's site, traviswalton.com, are right there at jimmychurchradio.com. His book, and certainly Jennifer Stein's documentary, Travis, is a tremendous viewing and highly recommended. This is Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. I'm going to swing back after this short break. Stay with us.